you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kazim, they're appearing below. So you want to mute,
Oh,
right?
yes. Hey, Joan.
Hi.
I I'm gonna ask if you wouldn't mind. Okay, you already turned off your camera. That's perfect. I would just in case you didn't know that your face was being showing up on our side, I wanted to let you know that you could turn off your camera. But it looks like you did that, so that's great. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so we're getting ready to start. It's a few minutes after 6 o'clock. By the way, Joan, is your exam tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay, good, good. So let's go over some stuff. I see Betsy just joined. Hey, Betsy.
Hi.
Okay. Um, let's see. I'm just gonna, for now, I'm gonna turn off the mics. But if we have any questions, if you guys have any questions later on, we can certainly address all of your questions. There's a chat box on the side, so you could write in the chat. Steve, are you still there?
I am still here. I'm just
Okay, wonderful.
waiting.
So Steve Warner and I put this SAT prep webinar together. It's designed to be a crash course sort of for tomorrow to give you guys some strategies that you could implement immediately to help you improve your score. I worked for Kaplan for the last 11 years. Kaplan, you may have heard of them. They're one of the largest test prep companies in the world. So I was teaching SAT for about 11 years now, and so I wanted to bring you guys some of the best strategies that I learned while working teaching SAT prep, and and so did Steve. Steve also has an extensive background in SAT prep. So without further ado, I wanted to pass it over to Steve Warner to introduce himself.
Okay, I think you can go to the next slide, Kazim. And so I apologize in advance if there's any technical issues here. This is the first time we're actually using Google Hangouts for this. We kind of switched over systems. We're just trying to figure out which one's the best one for these webinars. But as a consequence, I've lost control this time. So, so Kazim will be controlling the slides today. So just a little bit about me real quick. I graduated from Rutgers University with my PhD in mathematics in 2001. And I currently work as a professor at Hofstra University. But more importantly, I've been tutoring for the SAT and other standardized tests for a little over 15 years now. About 4 years ago, I decided to write my first book, which was called The 32 Most Effective SAT Math Strategies. After I wrote that, I was kind of surprised to see that there was not really anything else out there that sort of just kind of gave all these strategies in one place. So that was nice. And the second book I wrote after that, that one sold so well, and I kind of decided to form this company, Get 800. And as of now I have 12 books that I've written. And about a year and a half ago or so, I met Kazim. He was interested in using my materials for some classes he was running. So we got to talking for an extended period of time, and we decided that we were going to be working together in a bigger context. For one thing, he wound up writing my first verbal product that I brought into the company, the SAT vocabulary book. Kazim, could you mute the...
Yep, I think that's John.
Yep. Yeah, so we have some more people coming in. Yeah, so Kazim and I decided to form more of a business relationship. And he wrote this SAT vocabulary book for me, which is, people really, really seem to like it. And we decided to start doing these webinars together to get some good information out to people who need it, especially a day like today, day right before the SAT come out tomorrow. Kazim, why don't you go ahead and say anything you have to add about yourself before we go into the main part of the webinar?
Yeah, absolutely. I graduated from medical school last year, and since then I've been interested in test preparation and teaching. As Steve mentioned, I wrote the vocabulary book for Get 800. It's currently on Amazon.com, selling, as you can see, along with our other book, which is the 320 SAT math problems book that Steve wrote. This is one of his bestsellers. It's one of his, now I think probably, how many books do you have now, Steve? A dozen?
I've written 12, yeah,
Yeah.
and you know we have some more coming into the company from other authors at this point.
Yeah. So this is some of the work that was done. You know, as far as for SAT preparation is concerned, we've got math books, we've got the vocabulary books, and so we've so far been well received. About, as you can see, it's almost got perfect 5 stars out of 65 customer reviews on Amazon. And here's another student of ours who actually purchased one of Steve's books. This student was in an international baccalaureate program, which is an intense college prep program similar to AP classes with more like international standards. This student got a perfect score on his math, and his mom was so happy that she took a picture and posted it on Amazon. So as you can see, the student got a perfect 800 in math. Now a few words about the vocabulary book. It was written from the point of view to help you get a perfect score on the vocab, you know, on the critical reading section as well. The most difficult part about the critical reading part of the SAT is the vocabulary. They use very, very difficult terms, and we're going to talk about this more sooner. But if you guys are good with Latin or Greek, or like if you speak Spanish or Italian or have a Latin-based background, you probably have an advantage because you're able to read the prefixes of words and suffixes and pretty much understand what the word means, right? So the same thing is going to be on the SAT. You're going to get some pretty complex words, you know, and a lot of them are based out of Latin and Greek languages. So the more familiar you are, the better. But if not, in our book we go over a lot of the Latin and Greek roots to essentially help you, you know, understand all the words that are difficult on the SAT, so that you won't be surprised on test day. And now Steve's going to address specifically what is the SAT.
Okay, what is the SAT? All right, I'm not going to go into my rant about Futurama here, so let's just go ahead to the next slide.
Okay.
All right, so a big question that people actually seem to want to know the answer to. I'm not sure why people care so much, but they seem to want to know what SAT stands for. So scroll it over, Kazim. Yeah. So there's actually a little history behind this. From the 20s through the early 90s, SAT always stood for Scholastic Aptitude Test, and the word aptitude means innate skill. So something sort of internal that you can't control. Either you have it or you don't. But you know, in the 90s, the College Board finally admitted this wasn't really entirely accurate. Could you move to the next one, Kazim?
Yeah. I just wanted to add, by the way, guys, that we're going to get into some specific problems soon, so stick around. I didn't mention in the beginning that we're going to be applying a lot of the stuff that Steve's going to be talking about in some problems shortly.
Okay, so you know, once it was accepted that this wasn't accurate, the College Board changed the definition to Scholastic Assessment Tests, which was supposed to cover both the regular SAT, the reasoning test, as well as the subject tests. But for some reason, they only used this term when applied to the collective, and it didn't have any meaning for each of the individual tests. Yeah, I know it's kind of complicated. And then eventually, you know, it was kind of decided that the SAT, the letters don't stand for anything at all. It's just the name of the test. Go ahead and scroll forward. Yeah, so go ahead to the next one, Kazim. Okay, so how long do I need to study for the SAT? So a lot of people ask me, they come to me panicked. I only have this much time before the SAT. Is it too late? How long do I really need to study for it? Go over to the next one, Kazim. Ideally, in an ideal situation, you should really begin studying about 3 to 4 months before the test. And if you have 3 to 4 months before the test, then you can get away with doing about 15 to 20 minutes of studying every day. ideally you should kind of just pick a fixed time each day that you're going to dedicate to these 15 to 20 minutes to. Now, a lot of people, unfortunately, don't have 3 to 4 months before taking the test. Obviously, some of you are going into the test tomorrow, so this doesn't apply to you for this test at least. If you're going to be taking it a second time, then of course this would still apply. So if you don't have 3 to 4 months, say you only have 1.5 or 2 months, then it would, you could kind of just double the amount. So instead of doing 15 to 20 minutes a day, you might want to do 2 sessions of 15 to 20 minutes a day. I don't recommend you double the amount of time in a single session. What you'll want to do is break up the 2 sessions, as far apart as possible. For example, do 15 to 20 minutes in the morning, and then another 15 to 20 minutes later in the evening. And if you have even less time, then it couldn't hurt to do 3 little study sessions a day. For example, if you have less than a month, just a few weeks, then maybe do 15 to 20 minutes in the morning, again in the afternoon, and again in the evening. Let's go on to the next slides. Yeah, go to the next one. Okay, so now, what's the best way to prepare for the SAT? Next slide. As I said, you want to choose a consistent study time and, if possible, a consistent location as well for your test prep. Next. Notice that I put the next thing in purple. I kind of marked off 4 of the most important strategies for preparing for the SAT in purple. These are sort of like really simple things that a lot of students just don't do. So this one is very, very important. When you're practicing, every time you get an SAT question wrong, you need to mark it off, and you need to periodically redo the ones you got wrong every few days. And if you still get it wrong the next time, you need to keep it marked off and try it a few days later. So you need to keep doing this over and over again until you can get each individual question correct on your own. Because your score doesn't improve by getting questions right. If you got it right, then you're probably going to get it right on the test too. Your score goes up when you get a question wrong, and then eventually are able to turn it around and get it right. So, again, very important. Always keep track of the ones you get wrong, and make sure you keep redoing them. And it doesn't matter what the error is. A lot of people make the mistake of saying, oh, this was just a careless error. I know what I did. I don't need to do this one again. That's wrong. Because what's going to happen is you're going to get a question which isn't exactly the same as that one, and you're going to make the same type of careless error, and you're not even going to connect the two because you just don't have enough experience to realize that that's what's going on. So to avoid that, all you need to do is just make sure you keep redoing these problems over and over again. Next slide. Another very important one, trying to solve every problem in more than one way. Getting the solution to a specific problem for the SAT isn't particularly important because you're never going to see that exact problem again. What is important is to learn as many techniques and strategies and methods as possible. And the way you do that is by trying to solve problems in as many ways as possible. So I usually recommend up to like 4 ways to solve a problem. You should first try to do it like using a nice SAT-specific strategy. Then try to do it the way you would do it in school, which is usually a lot more long-winded. Then try and see if you can think of the quickest way to do it, and then decide which way is the easiest way for you. Sometimes, some of these methods are the same, and sometimes all 4 of them will be different. So for some problems, you might be solving 2 or 3 different ways, and other problems you might say, I only really have one way to solve this problem. That's okay. As I've said, I just kind of mentioned, learning test-taking strategies that work specifically for standardized tests. This is very important because it's very hard to get an 800 on the SAT by solving every problem the way you would do it in school. So if you're only using the methods you learned in school to solve problems, you're not going to be able to get a perfect score because a lot of those methods are just either too time-consuming or the test itself is specifically designed to trick you when you are using those methods. Okay, next. Another really, really important one, focusing on SAT math problems that are at and slightly above your current ability level. I get emails from students all the time that, for a specific problem, they'll send me like a level 5 problem and ask me, I'm stuck on this, how do I do this? And I'll always ask them what their current score is, And sometimes I get students who say, oh, 400 or even 500. And this is a problem because a student who's currently getting 400s and 500s in math should not be attempting level 5 problems. It's just not a good way to improve your score. You should be, for example, if you have a 400, you should really be working on level 2 and 3 problems for the most part, and eventually work your way up to level 4 problems. And maybe one day do level 5, and maybe not, because you could break a 700 very easily without ever doing a level 5 problem. So you shouldn't be working on those really, really difficult problems until your score is suggesting that those difficult problems are actually going to help you with your score. Okay, next. And the last thing for preparation, take 4 official SAT practice tests before test day. So by an official test, I mean one written by the College Board, either an actual old exam or something from the Blue Book is okay, the second edition of the College Board's official study guide. Actually, taking practice tests isn't the biggest problem for most people. Most students are actually taking too many practice tests. So I usually have to tell them, you don't need to do this many. About one a month is fine. Your daily studying should mostly be focusing on problems that are at and slightly above your current ability level, as I mentioned in the last strategy. Okay, another question I get from a lot of students is, how can I get to the end of each section on the SAT? So what I always tell them is this is a really bad question. Worrying about getting to the end of the test is not the best way to improve your score. Most students will actually improve their score by reducing the number of questions that they're attempting. Most students are already attempting too many questions. This sounds kind of weird because when you take tests in school, you're expected to answer all the questions. But on the SAT, it could actually be harmful for you to answer every question, depending upon what your current score ability is. For example, if you're scoring below a 600, then in order to improve your score to over a 600, all you really need to do is answer about 2/3 of the questions. So if you answer 2/3 of the math questions on the SAT correctly, you get about a 600. So if you answer a little bit more than that, you could actually get closer to a 650. Now, once you're actually scoring around the cutoff point that I usually say is about a 630. Once you're scoring about a 630, then it's time to really make sure you're answering all the questions on the math section of the test. But until then, you can actually usually improve your score by reducing the number of questions that you're attempting. Okay, go ahead to the next slide. Okay, this is a little chart that's in basically all of my material, all of my SAT prep materials, and it just basically spells out, based upon your current score, what you got on your last practice test, exactly how many questions you should be answering in each section. I'm not going to dwell on this and go into detail on this. You could find this in any of my products. You can also find it in various articles across my website. It's very easy to find without even making any purchases. You can find this, and with a full explanation of how to interpret it. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, how much math do I need to learn for the SAT? For most students, the answer is none. Most students already know all the math that they need to know to do well on the SAT. So the obvious question is if every student already knows all the math they need, then how come every student isn't getting an 800? And the answer is because the way the test is designed and the way the questions are is that they're made to trip you up a little bit. And what most students are missing is that they just need to learn specific strategies to make sure that they're answering these types of questions correctly. Even though they know all the mathematics, most students are just getting tricked by the wording, or they're making careless errors because the SAT questions are designed to force you to make careless errors, or they're taking too much time for questions and not getting to the end of the test. Okay, so I thought I'd give you a sample SAT math problem. This is actually a level 5 question, and this is a type of question that uses a strategy that you can find in all of my books and all my materials. And the thing is, if you try to do this problem the way you would in school, it'll take a really, really long time, and you'll probably wind up getting the answer wrong anyway because it's so messy algebraically. So let's look at a quick way to do this question. If xy equals 5, yz equals 8, x equals 10, and x is greater than 0, then x times y times z is what? Go to the next one. So the quick way to do this is simply by multiplying these three numbers together. 5 times 8 times 10 is 400, and then simply taking the square root of 400 to get 20. Okay. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail, but in case you want to get an idea of how that works, so when you get good at the problem, you would just simply do that. But just to see why that actually works, if we line up these equations vertically, Kazim, could you fix the screen there?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. All right, so if you line up these equations vertically, you can see that if you multiply all the left-hand sides together, each variable appears twice, so you get x squared, y squared, z squared. And on the right, if you multiply everything together, you get 400. And now simply take the square root of each side, and on the left, you get x times y times z, and on the right, you get the square root of 400, which is 20. Okay, so once you get really good at this, though, with a little bit of practice, you'll see a problem like this. You'll go, oh, I just type into your calculator, by the product, and then simply take the square root in your calculator. Get the screen back up there, Kazim. It's not full screen right now. There we go.
Okay.
Okay. So how long is the SAT? Well, the SAT consists of 10 sections. There are 3 math, 3 reading, 2 writing, an essay, and an extra experimental section, which could be either math or one of the verbal sections. It has a huge testing time of 3 hours and 45 minutes. Very, very long test. Very hard to get through. You need a lot of endurance. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Kazim for a little bit to talk a little bit more about SAT vocabulary.
Yep, that's great, Steve. Does anybody have any questions so far? There is a Q&A application here built in. So, yeah, it looks like there are a few questions here. First question, Jocelyn, is it too late to order the book? No, it's not too late at all. I'm glad you asked. And at the end of this, pretty soon, in the next probably 30 minutes or so, Steve is going to send you a link to order the books. We have a great special going on right now as well, so you'll save a ton of money. So yeah, no, it's not too late to order the book. Stefan says, so I don't need my mic. No, you don't need your mic today, Stefan. You can type just like you're typing, and we'll be able to address your questions directly. What's a good way to break my score on reading if it's a 600 when the critical reading is so subjective? Stefan, that's a great question. The best way to improve your score is through vocabulary. In fact, we're about to talk about that more specifically right now. I'm about to dive in and get into more detail. So get ready to learn, take some notes, and then stay tuned all the way till the end, and we'll have a lot of good stuff for you to increase your score. Is there any way to get a PDF copy of the vocab book since it's too late to take the test? Yes, absolutely. We'll send you a PDF ebook copy. It's not too late. Stick around till the end, and we'll give you all the information. Is it an ebook since my test is tomorrow? Yes, it's an ebook. You'll get it immediately. All right, let's get back to the presentation. Great questions so far, guys, and I know there's a lot of people concerned about the critical reading section. So here we go. Actually, there is legitimate cause of concern for the critical reading section because I bet nobody, hardly anybody guesses that the critical reading section has been the worst score reported by the College Board, that students score below math every single year for the last 10 years. So this is pretty consistent data, which is actually pretty surprising, but at least for many people, it's surprising to know that critical reading is the weaker area for most students, not all students, but most students, on a year-by-year basis. The biggest problem for students in the verbal section is the vocabulary. The vocab is notoriously archaic, meaning they use words on the SAT that are no longer commonly used today. These are words from the 1800s, 1700s, you know, back when we lived in a different world, and culture was totally different, ideals were completely different, and thereby language was entirely different. The origins of the English language are predominantly Greek and Latin. Over 50% of English words are derived from Greek and Latin. So what are you going to do to prepare for your test tomorrow? You're probably going to want to review some of these Latin and Greek roots and brush up on the most common ones so that you're most able to handle words that you don't recognize. Because if you've ever seen a practice SAT or taken a practice test or done any sections in the critical reading section, you'll know that the biggest trouble is some of these words. Because if you don't understand words, how are you going to understand the sentence? If you don't understand the sentence, how are you going to understand the passage? Right? So understanding the words is the biggest obstacle students need to get over, and we have a lot of resources to help you do that. We're going to share everything with you as we get to the end of this presentation. But the point is that students tend to get stuck on very complicated words. Here's one of our solutions that we've developed in-house in our Get 800 wheelhouse of book publications. This is one of our books that we recently published in October. So far it's been doing extremely well. Students have been saying that it's helped them so much in improving their scores and really made a difference for them. This vocabulary book is packed with ways to double your score quickly, including learning the Latin and Greek roots, because that's something you guys should really be considerate of and take into consideration as you're studying, because you want to improve your score as quickly as possible. So when you're studying or you're giving advice to your friends, the learning vocabulary will really help you do that. And in our book, we have a lot of practice. We give you practice problems. We go over the hardest words that you'll see on the exam. And we have some fun games, too, and crossword puzzles, as well as flashcards to help you learn the Latin and Greek roots and the toughest words. They're all on, like, over 200 flashcards for you as well. It's all inside the book. Okay, so let's...
I think you have to fix one of the images down on the bottom real quick.
Yes.
Someone's camera is on.
Okay.
Can you mute that?
I can mute that.
Yeah.
I believe that's Michael. Michael, how you doing? I'm gonna just mute the mic so that we don't hear that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about the new SAT, which is everybody's been talking about the new format, right? So there's a new format up and coming for the SAT. That change will take effect in March 2016. What changes are we talking about? Well, there's going to be some massive changes on the SAT. It won't be recognizable as the same anymore. In terms of, especially the vocabulary is going to be entirely different next year. But if you're taking your exam tomorrow, ignore that. You don't even have to worry about that. Okay, the new changes won't affect you. You have to still study for the old SAT. You don't have to know anything new. But if you're a person who's taking the exam next year, then you should plan to prepare with new materials, which the College Board is going to release, but also we're going to release our own new test prep material starting probably by this summer. So look out for that. But if you're taking your test tomorrow, don't even sweat it. Just don't worry about the new exam. It doesn't affect you at all. Just study the old stuff and the current material. The new SAT will be scored out of a 1600 as opposed to a 2400, which it is now. So the 2400 includes the essay. So that's going to be optional next year. The first PSAT will be given in October this year for anybody who needs to know about that. But let's keep moving. I want to get to the meat of the presentation here. Basically, what the new SAT is going to have, in case you're wondering, I'll run through this real quick. There won't be any more guessing penalties. So you won't get points off for being wrong. The essay, as I said, will become optional. A calculator will not be allowed for certain questions. And there will be no more archaic vocabulary words. As I mentioned, like the biggest change is going to be that, especially for the critical reading section, is the vocab. There won't be any more outdated vocab. So next year, it's going to be more words that are commonly used, but they're going to test you to see if you know all the meanings of a specific word. So they'll give you a word like encounter, and they'll see if you know like all the different meanings of encounter, because it could mean different things in different contexts. So they'll test more common words next year. For now, you gotta learn the old archaic words. How are the percentiles graded? So when you get your score, let's say you're taking your exam tomorrow, you'll get your score probably in about 3 weeks. Usually it's about 19 days to be exact. 19 days after tomorrow, you'll get your score online. And then you can send your score reports out to colleges of your choice on that same day, 19 days after your test. So how is your score graded exactly? You're going to get a percentile as well as a raw score. The percentile basically means, like, let's say you score above a 2200 or equal to a 2200, you'll score better than 99% of all other test takers out there in the world. So it's a comparison. The percentile compares you with all other people who took the SAT, and in that given time period, and they will compare you guys. So you'll be, your score will be compared to students, across the country from you. So so it's a national, international exam actually. All right, and now we received a bunch of questions about our prep books. I wanted to address them again here, in that our prep books are available. All of them are bundled in this package that we're offering you today, actually, because the exam is tomorrow. We wanted to give it to you in PDF format so that you could take advantage of these right away. So as you can see, we've bundled up these books, and we hope they'll be useful to you all. As you can see, there's a beginner course for the SAT Math, as well as an intermediate course and an advanced course. Now, in a minute, I'm going to pass it over to Steve to explain this more, but there is a lot. This bundle is packed with good stuff. You've got problems here, 320 math problems you could work on this evening, as well as the SAT vocabulary book, which you could practice your Latin and Greek roots and really get a leg up ahead of time for your test tomorrow, and brush up on the most common roots so that you're prepared. Also, for a limited time, we're throwing in this ACT prep book, which students are also these days taking both exams, the SAT and the ACT. Not that you have to, but some do. So in case you're considering taking both exams, we've got the ACT prep math book as well. Steve, can you talk a little bit about the 28 lessons book and the beginner course, intermediate versus the advanced?
Sure. So what I always recommend for anyone, obviously if you're taking your test tomorrow, the most you could hope to do with some of these books now is just kind of breeze through and pick up a couple quick strategies that actually could potentially work to your advantage tomorrow if you didn't know these strategies to begin with. But more for preparation for a little bit longer term, each of these 28 SAT Math Lessons books is designed to be done in about a month, and they're each targeted for a specific score level. So, for example, the beginner course is only for students that are scoring below a 500, using your last practice test or your PSAT as a guide. The intermediate course is for students scoring between 500 and 600, and the advanced course is for students scoring over 600 and who are going for an 800, basically. You can't go from a 400 to an 800 in one step. You have to go one level at a time, and this is why I always suggest doing problems that are at and slightly above your ability level. What's great about these books is that you don't have to think about what to study. If you're below a 500, then the beginner course has exactly the types of problems and exactly the strategies and concepts you need, and it does them in order, and it's very easy to get through. So if you're scoring below a 500, you might actually go through the beginner course and feel like you're not really doing much because it's so simple, but you're when you take your next practice test, your score will go up 100 points at least. When you go through the intermediate course, now the intermediate course is a little bit tougher, so it's gonna, you're gonna work a little bit harder, but not too hard. It's just a little step up from the beginner course. And the advanced course, well, that one's very difficult, and that's really designed for students who are willing to work and want to get from the 650 level up to an 800 level. The 320 SAT Math Problems book it's just as it says, it's just 320 problems, but the organization is what people seem to really love about this book, and that's why it's my bestseller. It's organized by level and topic, so exactly the types of problems that you want to and need to be working on can be found very, very easily. The 32 Most Effective Strategies book, that was the first book I put out, and that's basically, in sort of in an encyclopedic fashion, the 32 strategies that I've been teaching all of my students for the last 15 years, together with lots of practice problems for each one to show you how to use each one in different situations. And the SAT Prep Official Study Guide Companion, that has all solutions to every single math question and all of the practice tests from the Blue Book. And they're all done in my style, and a comprehensive review of everything you need to know for the SAT is built into there as well. And finally, the ACT Red Book is basically the ACT version of the 320 Problems book. ACT is a little bit more focused on math content rather than strategy. So it's just doing a lot of practice problems at the appropriate level, and the topics that you need to work on is the best way to go for the ACT.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, we've got everything you need there and more. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to ask us. But Steve, before we go ahead, can you share the link?
Where do I share the link, first of all?
In the chat box.
Just in the chat box. Okay. Just give me a second to get the link.
No problem. So
you should probably tell them the price and everything.
Yes, absolutely. These books are on sale today. The full price is well over $200. They're 30 bucks each on Amazon. But by buying the copies today, you save over 70%. So the link that Steve is going to send you is to PayPal. It's actually, we added the ACT book in to this bundle just before we put this presentation together. So we added it in there, and we're steeply discounting the whole bundle for $67. So the sale price today is $67, and that'll give you electronic copies of all the books. And it'll also give you access to us. We'll answer any questions that you have right now, and also through email for the rest of the evening. So please let us know if you have any questions.
I think you changed the link to the. I think you changed the link. Do you wanna get it for me?
The link to the PayPal.
Just the direct link to the PayPal you want for the books? Oh, okay, sure. Let me get that for you.
Just a moment, guys. Steve's going to put the link in there. In the meantime, if you have any questions, I mean, normally students ask us, anything that's on their mind. Anything from how do I get my score up to,
Did that get shared with everyone, Kazim?
I think so. Yeah, it should.
Okay.
Yes, so it should be in the chat box, guys. So please take a look in your chat, and that's how you can order the books immediately. You'll get them immediately.
Okay, so if anyone has any other questions that they want to ask, anything related to the SAT at all, the books, anything else, anything about the upcoming test or tests in the future, please feel free to ask. We're happy to stay a little longer to answer any questions that you might have.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question.
Please.
What do you know about the math on the new SAT?
I guess that's a question for me. Well, not as much as I would like at this point. So I don't like to talk too much about it until I see a lot more sample questions.
Right.
There are a couple of things I could say about it. One is that there's definitely going to be some more sort of wordy problems that have to do with what the College Board kind of says are real life situations, although I'm always a little suspicious that these kind of things are actually accounted in the real world.
Right.
There's also I also noticed that there seems to be more problems involving systems of equations, in particular ones that are nonlinear, so they're going to be a little bit harder. There's also definitely going to be some trigonometry, and those are some of the main things that come to mind. But I suspect that a lot of the math questions, especially the easy to medium level ones, are going to be pretty similar to what we're already seeing. And just there's just going to be a few sort of newer questions sprinkled in on the SAT, especially in the harder questions. But I can't confirm anything for sure until the College Board actually comes out with something.
Just yet and gotten an experimental section?
I have not. I actually have not seen any of the new experimental sections yet. No.
Okay, because I had one and I hated it.
Of course. It's not. It's going to be a less fun test.
Yes.
Yes. Certainly. So I kind of have a picture in my head of what that experimental section probably looks like. And did you get anything like the types of questions that I just mentioned?
Yeah, it was a lot of reading, a lot of word problems,
Yep.
and a lot of data, like the line of best fit,
Yep.
and then strange questions, like the word problem would describe a scenario, and then you had to come up with a mathematical equation that matched that scenario.
Right. So mathematical modeling. Yes. Yep. That sounds about right. What's going to happen is, I think in about the next month, the College Board is going to be releasing a lot more sample type of questions, and once that happens, that's when I'm going to start updating all of my products. But I don't want to do it until I have what I feel is sufficient information to really give everyone a good idea of what's actually going to be on the test. I don't want to guess. That's not going to be helpful to anyone, and I don't want people paying money for things when I'm guessing what's going to be on the test. I want to know for sure.
Thanks for the question, Jen. We have a few more questions, from Joan. Joan wants to know, what are the core formulas we should know for the math section?
So is this the current math section or the future math section?
Probably the current.
Yeah, but so for the current math section, I actually have a nice article on my website. If you go to my website and just search for formulas, or actually if you just search for math formulas in Google, I think my webpage comes up as number 1 or 2. It's one of my more popular pages, and I actually give a comprehensive list of all the math formulas you need for the SAT, together with example SAT questions where those formulas can be used. And people really love this page, so I suggest you check it out whenever you get the chance.
Okay, we have another question from Jocelyn. Jocelyn asks us, how often do you guys do this chat for SAT?
I'll let you take that one, Kazim.
Jocelyn, so every time we've done one, we've had some great questions and great feedback from people. We're going to keep doing it as long as you guys need us to do it. So far it's been great, so we're going to keep doing it. Probably, we've been doing it every 2 weeks or so. But we'll send out an email, and you'll see on the website updates on, when we do, and on the Facebook page. So, but we're looking to do it every 2 weeks, especially like the week of the SAT, like the day before the exam is when a lot of students tend to panic about it, or have a lot of questions. So we try to provide support right before the exam.
Yeah, and I also just want to say that as more information comes out about the new SAT, we'll be updating these webinars to include that information so that you guys can stay basically as up to date as we are on what the changes are going to be.
Yep. Another question from Aaron. Is there more algebra or geometry questions?
I guess this is and as far as the current SAT goes, they're pretty close actually. On the regular SAT, algebra and geometry, there are about the same number of questions roughly. For the subject tests, there are usually more geometry questions, but for the SAT reasoning test, they're about equal.
Okay. There's another very specific question, Steve, about mixtures. Vineeth wants to know, what is the best way to do mixtures?
Well, I don't think I want to answer a general question like that without seeing a specific problem in front of me. But if you have a specific mixture problem or the type of problem that you're concerned with, send me an email and I'll give you an explanation of how to do it.
Okay, Vineeth, send over an email to steve@satprepget800.com. Steve, we have a question from Brad Yates. He wants to know, if we've already purchased the books, will we offer a discount for the updated versions to match the new SAT?
We actually haven't discussed this yet, but certainly yes. I'm certainly going to be offering some kind of discount. I don't know exactly what that is yet, but especially for people who are buying the books now, kind of midway between, and they may have to take the old one and they may have to take the new one, or they want to start preparing for the new one, but the new material isn't out, so they want to start with this material and then update to the new material. I will be doing my best to give as big a discount as I can for those people. Just make sure you hang on to your receipt when you make these purchases, and when the new ones come out, send me your receipt, and whatever that discount is at that time, you will definitely get it. And I will do my best to make it a very worthwhile discount. I don't want you guys to have to pay, full price twice for essentially what's the same thing.
All right. Please ask your questions if you have any more, everybody. Did everybody get the link to purchase the books? Steve put it in the chat. In order to get the link, just go over to the chat, and you'll be able to find the link to purchase the books.
Yeah, and I guess we should just mention that you can purchase these books individually, but it's, we're giving you a really, really good price here for, 8 books. It's actually almost ridiculous, but each of these books, if you buy them individually from the website, you could go check yourself that they're each $24. So if you really only need the vocabulary book and that's the only one you want, then you could go ahead and get that for $24, or you could get the paperback version from Amazon. I think Amazon has it discounted to about $23 right now, or $24, something like that. So you could buy them individually, but at the price that we're giving for all of them, I think it's really worth it. There's also a money-back guarantee on it. You have 60 days. If for some reason you don't like it, they don't connect with you or whatever it is, just send me an email, or you could actually do a cancellation right from your old PayPal account. Yeah, so easy, medium, and hard questions. Someone just asked about how many easy, medium, and hard style questions are in each section. And for the math, it's roughly a third, and a third. So about a third of the questions are easy, a third medium, and a third hard, which is why I kind of stressed earlier in the webinar that to get a 600, if you answer just 2/3 of the questions, which is just the easy and medium ones, you could actually break a 600. You don't have to answer one single hard question to get a 600 on the SAT. You only have to answer hard questions when you want to get higher than a 600. So if you're currently scoring a 500 or below, you shouldn't be working on any hard questions. More specifically, the College Board breaks the questions into 5 levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that's exactly how in my books, I label each question with the level that it is. And that, by the way, because I've gotten some feedback every once in a while from someone saying, this shouldn't be a level 4 question, this is an easy question. And it's not my levels. These are the levels that I put on the questions in my books. They're all what the College Board says are the levels, and those levels are determined by how students actually perform on that type of question. So essentially it's you guys nationwide who determine the level of these questions. So just because a question says it's a level 5 question, it doesn't mean it's really hard, it just means everyone's getting it wrong. Okay, someone's saying they're not seeing the link. Could you make sure that link is there, Kazem?
Yes. It is. It's in the chat box.
Why don't I copy it into a new? I'll copy it one more time. Someone's saying they can't find the article about the math formulas. I'm going to go and get a link to that because people seem really interested in that, and I want them to be able to access it. So let me just go ahead and get that. You can also link over to it from my free resources page. If you go to my free resources page on my website at the bottom, there's a link to the math formulas page, but I'm going to give you a direct one right in the chat box also. Let me just find this here. Okay, so hopefully you see both of these links now. The first link is the PayPal link to order the books, and right below that there's another link which will take you right to that math formula page, which is actually an extremely popular page. On some days I get thousands and thousands of people viewing this page in a single day. Okay.
Someone wants to, Vineeth wants to know, what raw score do you think we need to get at least a 700?
For tomorrow? It's a little tricky because, especially at the high end, when I say 2/3 gives you about a 600, that's pretty accurate on most SATs. But at the high end, it really does depend upon the difficulty of the test. So if you find yourself getting an easier test, that probably means you have less leeway to get any wrong. Whereas if you have a really hard test, that might actually work better sometimes for the stronger students because you could actually get a few wrong and get a higher score. But basically to get a 700, if you can keep it down to less than 1 wrong per section and maybe 2 wrong on one of the sections, you should be able to break a 700. So, if you get 6 wrong, very often you can break a 700. But basically around 4 to 6 wrong is what you're looking at, roughly.
Yep. Jocelyn is asking where's the chat box, and it seems like other people are having problems seeing the link. Jocelyn, it should be on the left-hand side.
You may have to move your mouse to the left-hand side of the screen, and it should pop out, I think.
And yeah, once you see it, it's the blue one that looks like chat conversation bubbles. So you click that button, and then the chat will pop up.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any more questions? I think what we'll do is I'll send an email out with the link because it seems like a lot of people can't seem to see it. So if you can't find the chat box, I'll definitely email it to you guys.
Joan is asking one more question here. Kazem, do you perhaps have a link with most commonly seen SAT vocab?
Yeah, that's in the book. We put together the SAT vocabulary book with the most commonly seen SAT vocab in there, as well as the hardest words. We also have the most common roots of Latin and Greek. It's all inside the book, so that's there. If we're, apart from that, you could probably try to pull from sources online, but it's all neatly organized and put together for you in the SAT vocab book.
Yeah, one of the main problems from trying to get everything for free with SAT prep, it probably can be done, but the amount of time you have to spend going through things and putting them together, one of the selling points of actually making a purchase for SAT prep in the form of a book is the structure of the book is going to guide you through the process. It's not even necessarily the content all the time, although of course we pride ourselves on providing not only an amazing structure but also the best content that you could find, and the content in these books is exactly, you're only going to see things that are exactly like what you're going to see on an actual SAT. There's no fluff. Everything gets right to the point. One thing you'll notice about these books is that they're much thinner than some of the major test prep companies, and that just basically has to do with our teaching philosophy, which is to get right to the point and show you exactly what you need to do well on the test and not get caught up in heavy mathematics or teaching you things that you've already seen a million times. Just getting right to applying things right to SAT questions and getting your score up as quickly as possible. Again, you could, for example, you could hunt through my blog. I got tons of great stuff on there. Every week I put out new content, giving you strategies, you could dig through that if you want. If you're looking not to spend any money, there's lots of great stuff on there. But if you could spend just a little bit of money for good SAT prep, then you're going to get a really nice structure, and it's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of aggravation, and you're going to get through your SAT prep quickly and painlessly, and your score is just going to go up, probably more than you believe it could even go up.
So Stefan has another question about the level of difficulty. With regards to the levels of the questions, what is the magnitude of levels 1 through 5? For example, 1 is easy, 2 is slightly harder, 3 medium, 4 is medium hard, and 5 is hard?
Yeah, I think you summed it up pretty nicely. Now again, these levels are determined. Let me be a little bit more specific about how these levels are determined for those of you who don't know. You all know that you're being given this experimental section. So the question is, someone mentioned before that their experimental section looked like stuff that's going to be on the new SAT and not the old one. Why would the College Board do this when it's so clear? And the reason is that they're going to use that data from that experimental section to determine which questions are level 1 through 5 on the new SAT, purely based upon how many people get the question right and wrong. So that's how the difficulty level is determined. It has nothing to do with the actual difficulty of the question. It has to do with exactly how many people got it wrong on an experimental section of an SAT. So if almost everyone gets it wrong, it becomes level 5. And what that means is that most people were tricked. So that's why, if you're a weaker math student, one strategy is to, for these level 5 questions, is to cross out the answer that you think it is. Because, most people got it wrong picking the answer they thought it was, so maybe you should pick one that you don't think it is. I go into a little bit more detail about that strategy and how it works in the 32 most effective SAT math strategies. But it's not one of the most important strategies. The more important ones are ones that actually get you the answer, not actually sort of cheat your way through it. But essentially what you said there is basically correct. Level 1 questions tend to be very easy, and they slowly go to much harder as you get to level 5. Okay, I think if there are no other questions, I think that'll be the end of the webinar for today. I hope we got to answer everything that you thought of. If you have any last-minute questions, feel free to send an email over. Kazim's going to send you the link once more time in case you couldn't see it in the chat box. So you'll get one more email with that link in case you want to make a purchase. And always feel free to contact us.
Real quick, Steve, one last question. Joan wanted to know, is the SAT curved at all?
Well, it's a standardized test. And what that means is, yes, there's a very strong curve in the sense that the whole test itself is normalized, meaning that the scores are very percentage-based. So this is why, this is kind of why you could guess what scores are going to be for the mid-range, but at the extremes, it's never really clear until the test is actually graded what those numbers are going to be. So for example, on some SATs, you get one question wrong or even omit one question, and your score might already jump down to a 760. Whereas on other SATs, you could get one wrong and still get an 800, although those have become very rare lately. They used to be a little more frequent with the older SAT before 2005. But yeah, there's a very strong curve in the sense that the College Board is trying to make sure that a certain number of people that took the test get each of the various scores.
All right, I think that's it for now.
Okay, great. Most guys is the SAT curve. Okay, yeah. So I think that's it. Okay, great having you guys. Thanks for coming. I hope we got to answer some of your questions. I hope you learned a few things about the SAT, and you feel a little bit better, especially if you're going in to take the test tomorrow. And have a great night. And for those of you taking the test tomorrow, good luck.
Good luck, everybody.